he had a very low. He had his hands and his elbows right
from the
tucked.
get-go.
Yeah, from the get-go, love to be tucked in. You notice that he was. Now, one thing we spoke about was that you thought he was going to be. You think he was going to lose via rear naked choke, because you tell me that whenever he goes down, he always exposes his back. Tell me a little bit more about that.
He has a bit of a. In a lot of his last 3 fights, he's picked up. He's got the tendency of doing well up against the cage, but when he drops down on the ground, he has this tendency to roll in the opposite direction and show his back, and he keeps on fighting people that way, and it doesn't work. You know, with a lot of really strong grapplers in the flyweight division now,
especially when you're doing it also against a Russian national champion wrestler.
Exactly.
He's going to capitalize on it.
I think he was a 2-time champion wrestler.
Yep.
He was a master in sambo, sport sambo. And we already, what was interesting was he didn't even make weight. Askarov was actually 1 pound over the limit. 1 pound's not a huge amount of weight. It's about, how much is that? 0.5?
Yeah, that was a bit strange.
0.5, 0.4 kilos.
Yeah.
And that was on his first attempt, and he didn't attempt to then go take his shorts off and do the towel.
Yeah.
And he would have made it. He didn't care, right? He didn't care for it.
I think he's going to bump up after this. I think he might bump up to bantamweight. He was a big flyweight. He's a massive flyweight. His shoulders were huge.
He's a massive flyweight, right? And especially a lot of these wrestlers have big, strong shoulders, big, strong backs.
Massive traps,
right? So, you know, it's difficult for them to suck down to flyweight since it's the lowest possible male division. But you could definitely see in this fight, when he did fight Benavidez, there was an obvious size difference. Benavidez did really well at cutting distance, right? He did really well at rushing him, cutting distance, changing stance, but he would do a one-punch combo. Well, this doesn't really count as a combo, just one strike. He never followed up with combinations. He would never strike, and then as soon as Askarov tries to, increase the distance between them, he would never kick him on the way out, right? He would only maybe, do a 1 or 2 punch combination, and it was frustrating because he was doing really well to cut distance against someone who's obviously taller and heavier than him. It was very weird. But then, as you were asking before about him turning his back, he keeps on having this tendency to turn his back, once he's under pressure. I think he gets a bit frustrated, and he'll turn his back over and show his back. And Askarov, you can't do that against that guy. He easily gets the hooks in and is able to stick on you like glue. He can't do that. Askarov, I think also, even on the feet, he dominated Benavidez, to be honest. Benavidez could have probably, edged him out on the scorecards if he had more volume, but Askarov just kept on hitting with hard shots, really, really hard shots. I think Askarov's performance was really, really well done. I'd like to ask you, to be honest, because now, assuming Askarov stays in the division.
Okay.
Assuming he stays in the division. He's number 3. He's beat number 2. We know that Moreno is going to fight. Moreno is going to have a rematch with Davison Figueiredo. Would you say he is next in line for a title shot, or still needs to prove himself? Because he's number 3. He beat number 2. Does he have to beat Moreno to be the next title contender?
It's a good question because I don't know.
If Moreno was to lose.
Yeah, if Moreno was to lose, it's a good question because of the fact that Askarov, even though he missed weight, he didn't. And if you're not going to take your shorts off,
he can't make that same mistake.
You can't do that.
Don't do that.
Because the issue with flyweight is it's such a hard weight to make because you have to be quite small to make that weight.
The champion himself did the exact same thing.
Exactly.
In the very first time, he could have had the belt around his waist, but he had to defeat Joseph Benavidez for a second time in order to actually be the champion. I don't get why you wouldn't re-weigh yourself for the second time, because you get an hour to cut weight and you can also use the towel. I don't see why he didn't do that, especially when if you're overweight, you get fined 30% of your purse.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I really don't. Perhaps he just hit a limit and that was the max he could do. And even if he took off his shorts under the towel, he wasn't going to make it and that was it. Fine. But let's say right now that Askarov cannot make the same mistake as Deiveson Figueiredo if he's in a title contender fight or a title fight. He needs to be more professional at that, and he needs to hit the 125 mark 100%. He needs to be championship weight. Yeah. He looks massive for the division, but so does the champion. Deiveson Figueiredo, he is massive. Yeah. Right? He could 100% be a bantamweight. Yeah. Easily. Just like Askarov. And I think these bigger guys will dominate the flyweight division. Him and Deiveson Figueiredo, they are big for the division. I would even say Brandon Moreno, he's fairly big for the division as well. Yeah. I thought his performance was very good. Clearly dominated Joseph Benavidez in the stand-up game, volume-wise. And grappling-wise, he torched him. He torched Benavidez.
He could have finished him as well. He had a rear naked in at one point, but he just couldn't quite get in the choke.
Couldn't quite get it.
And then he had to. And then
Benavidez was very hard with sticking his chin and finding the hands. Very good.
And I kind of felt sorry for Benavidez because right towards that end of those last rounds, he was really starting to put the pressure on him. He really, really wanted to get it back, and then like Askarov was just like standing back a little bit and easing off while Benavidez was still trying to maybe get his points back up. So, but here's the thing. Benavidez has got quite a few losses on his streak now.
That's something I want to ask you now. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. And twice to the champion, once to Askarov. Does... Dana today got asked the same question. And they said, do you have to have a chat with him? Which means, are you going to fucking get rid of him out of the UFC? And he said no. Do you agree with Dana's decision?
Yes, because two of those losses again are because technically, if you lose to one in a title picture and it's against someone who doesn't make weight, there's a fair argument against that. Okay, we talk about this a few times of how much weight makes a difference and size makes a difference. So that's definitely one. So I feel like if he loses one more.
He's out. He has to be out.
Yeah, he has to be. But it's not that. It's also because of his age, how much damage he can take, and just how long he's been doing it for. And not even that, but I think he holds... This is a bad record to hold, but he holds the record for most failed title attempts. 6. There you go. And that's not fun. And he's in his late 30s, so he's way past his prime.
He's 36. Now, that's not horrible in the UFC. But the ones that... The older gentlemen that fight in the UFC that dominate and do really well are the light heavyweights, the heavyweights, and the middleweights. Yeah. At the very bottom, at flyweight, flyweights are fast. Their reactions are really quick. Yeah. If you don't have those things because you're older, it's not going to happen. Yeah. I think in Benavidez will get it next. If Dana said it, I believe him. Benavidez, he's not going to retire yet, right? He works really, really hard. But he'll get another fight. Yeah. If he loses that, they have to cut him because he's going to continue to have punishment because he's not as fast, he's not as quick, he's not as big, and he's not as tall. And he's not as diverse as these new and up-and-coming people. They're just the new blood are just better, quicker, and faster. And I think, although Benavidez works really hard, it could be the end for him, and I think a 4th loss is coming. I would just say that just because, not that he's not a great fighter, I just think that the new generation are just better. Yeah, and I think he's been around in the UFC and even prior MMA promotions before that. He's been there for a long time, and
he set the standard, and then now people are just pushing past the standard, you know what I mean? Yeah. They built on what he has created.
Also, he has so many fights that they can study. Yeah. That's the main thing. Yeah. If you're Benavidez and you've had 6 title fights, you've also been in another MMA organization before that, and you've had a number of fights in that. Yeah. There is so much film to study. Yeah. Are you really going to pick up and acquire new skills at 36 years old? Anything that's going to drastically change your game? Maybe, but maybe not. the amount of film that you can watch for Benavidez is probably an issue because someone like Askarov can study that film really, really well and know Benavidez like a children's book, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another flyweight fight, Kai Kara France. So